Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the F-14 Tomcast, episode 5. In today's episode, we're going to be talking to a real live Iranian F-14 pilot. All right, so now some of the things you'll notice is if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that this is an audio-only interview for our guest, and that's just for his own personal safety. You may hear in the interview, you may hear some airplanes in the background of his audio. He happens to be standing near an airfield while we're conducting the interview. We're going to do our best to avoid talking about the politics of the day and instead stick to just flying the F-14 as a pilot and talking to him as a fellow aircrew flying the F-14. And that's our goal today.
I think a lot of people are looking forward to this one, so let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the F-14 Tomcast. I'm Vincent Aiello. I'm not your host, that's Crunch and Bio, but I do have the Fighter Pilot podcast where this series is playing for its rerun here in 2023. And before this particular episode, I just want to make a comment regarding the first time we aired this, and that is that we had some people that frankly challenged the veracity of our guest on this episode. Now, we happen to have extra information that I know it sounds, salacious. Oh yeah, we can't tell you, but we're sure he's legit. All I want to do here is just acknowledge that there are some with viable arguments, and we stand by our man. So with that in mind, enjoy this episode of the F-14 Tomcast and make your own decision. If you feel so inclined to leave a comment, you can do that too. But here we go.
Welcome back to the F-14 Tomcast. Today, we're talking to a former Iranian F-14 pilot. That's right, Iranian. Our guest flew the mighty Tomcat in the Iranian Air Force in the early 1990s, becoming an enthusiastic fan of the big fighter. He joins us today to describe the only foreign air force to operate the Tomcat and shed some light on a program shrouded in mystery.
No, that's all right. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much, guys, for having me. And it's very exciting. Such a small community that we all somehow find each other and get to know each other. Before anything, I just want to mention and a tribute to a top Tomcatter that we are mourning his loss today. And I had the privilege to meet him and talk to him. Such a great guy, very enthusiastic. I cannot even say good things about him enough that when I met him and I was like, who is this guy flying the F-86 that low into the water with the American flag on it? And then later that night I met Snort and we had a great chat about Tomcat, about all the stuff that we're going to talk today. And I'm definitely mourning his loss and I really miss him.
Well, and just for the audience, Mikey's referring to Snort Snodgrass, who died just a few days before we recorded this episode. And that was a very nice tribute. We joined him in mourning Snort's passing. Okay, in the interest of our guest's personal security, we will leave out some personal details, and we're going to concentrate on Iranian F-14s and Iran's Air Force. We'll also go out of our way to skip political or religious statements. So welcome, Mikey, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's great to be here. It is great to meet you guys. And looking forward to chat with you guys now.
Well, hey, Mikey, it's great to have you. Hey, Crunch here for those of you just listening audio only. So Crunch here. And Mikey, it's absolutely what an honor to have an opportunity to talk to you here. And just real quick for everybody, well, not real quick, take your time. Tell us a little about yourself. Where are you from, and how you got into flying the F-14?
All right. I was born in Iran, and about 15 minutes after Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So that's my original name comes from that, and then since then I don't know if it was a coincidence or something. I always was interested about space and everything, And then I grew up in South America before I went back to Iran. And I knew that all the astronauts, especially the space shuttle program, they're all like a former Air Force pilots, commanders. And I said, I want to be an astronaut. I want to go to space. And this is the way that I want to go. And I joined the Air Force. At that time, I was in Iran. So my only choice was joining the Iranian Air Force. We had few family friends and stuff who were in the Air Force, of course, previously when the king was in power. So at that time, it was a very prestigious job, and so in Iran, they're kind of like a national heroes. The pilots, especially fighter pilots and stuff. They treat you like national heroes and everything. So they're very respectful toward them. And I always wanted to be an astronaut. So I was like, okay, the first step I have to do is to go to the Air Force and start flying fighter jets, and then find my way to space shuttle. So that's yeah. So that was my dream. And then I saw guys like Hooter and stuff that they went from Tomcats into space shuttle and astronaut program. I was like, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do.
So did you always want to fly the F-14 then, or were you like, I just want to go fly fighters?
I wanted to fly fighters. I always wanted to fly fighters. I wanted to experience that. And then I remember the movie Top Gun came out. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then a few years later, when I was get selected for the Tomcat, and it was very few hours. I only had like about 500 something hours on the F5s, and which the commander called me and said that, yeah, so you're selected, because I think at that time the program was they wanted the experienced pilots for the Tomcat, but at the same time they wanted a younger guys who, while they go through the training, they can service longer than the former experienced F4 pilots or F5 pilots that they only have like 10 years or 12 years to retirement to go. So they wanted to bring the younger guys in, train them, and use them for a longer time and gain more experience.
Sounds like you were in the right place at the right time. And also, I mean, like many people who are in the right place at the right time, you had qualifications and the skills, and so they selected you. So that's good. Hey, Mikey, before we go any further, can we go into some background of Iran getting the F-14? The story that we have, I'm looking at my F-14 reference books on my bookshelf, and it talks about the Soviet, not Russian, but back in the Soviet Union days, MiG-25 Foxbats overflying Iran. Did you hear that story? And they wanted to get the F-14s to preserve their sovereignty.
Yes, actually, as you know, the king of Iran was the U.S. closest ally back in the 70s, in the Middle East. And from what I heard, again, I say it from my own point of view because I was much younger when I was there. So these are the stories that I hear from some of the more senior officers and the people, and some research that I've done. So because of the closeness that the Iran had with the U.S., of course, the Russia in the north was very sensitive toward that. So at that time, I don't know, there were no satellites, or spy satellites or something like that. So there were the MiG-25s that were coming over Iran to take pictures and, do all the reconnaissance. And at that time, the fighters that we had, the F-4s, they were not able to intercept and get, by the time they would get up there, the MiG-25 was gone. So we needed something that we can protect ourselves or prevent them to, enter Iranian airspace. And I believe the race was between the F-15 and the F-14 to sell to Iran. And the Air Force was really trying very hard to sell the F-15 to Iran. But because of the limitations that at that time the F-15 had with the radars and the missiles, the F-14 was much better choice for what Iran wanted the program for. And it proven to be the right choice for us, in one of the books that I read, written by an U.S. admiral, in one part, it was very funny. He mentioned that it was one of the life ironics that an Iranian bank saved the life of what it turns out to be the greatest fighter jet in the world.
No, oh, I've read that too. That is, I mean, that's documented. Like I said, I've got my Tomcat reference books, and the problem was, I'm going to just give a short version of it. Well, you got to go back to the early '70s when the Tomcat was under development, and the Navy was planning to buy it. Congress and defense commentators freaked out because the jet was more than $10 million a copy. And so Grumman did everything they could to keep the price down. And as I understand it, they negotiated a contract that put the burden on them to absorb cost increases or something like that. And then inflation went up, costs went up, and Grumman was on the verge of going insolvent. And so an Iranian bank loaned them the money to save their business.
Yes, this is something I heard too. I think the Shah, who was also the pilot, the king, we say the Shah is the king, who was also a pilot, he came personally to the U.S. and saw both demonstration of the F-15 and the F-14. And he chose the F-14, and he mentioned apparently there was something wrong with the budget and stuff. And he said, I pay for it, but the first 100 Tomcats are mine. I heard something like that.
Oh, God.
So this is, I believe, this is how the Grumman got the that power to continue with the development of the plane. And what a beautiful plane!
So back in the day, then, was it a buy? The size of the buy was 100. I don't know the answer to that. Was it 100?
I have no idea. I know that there were 80.
Yeah.
One stayed in Grumman factory, or I believe in Miramar, for the test, for the missile test, and 79 was delivered.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that was that's my understanding of the project, of course.
When we were getting ready to do this interview, I looked at my books again, and some of them said that there were 80, like Mikey just said. 79 were delivered, and they said that there was a plan for at least 40 more, but that that got cut off.
Things
when
changed.
the regime changed. Yeah.
Probably. And the other thing was that Iran was the first foreign client for the F-16s, and they ordered 300 F-16s, which a lot of people don't know about it, because the Iranian F-5 is supposed to be sold to Jordan, and one of our relatives that I used to call him uncle, he was one of the first group of pilots, F-5 pilots, that went to Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas to train on the F-16s and prepare for the first batch of 160 F-16s to be delivered to Iran.
Wow.
And then, of course, the revolution happened. And when the revolution happened, the shipment stopped. General Dynamics was panicking because they were like going bankrupt, because their first order of 300 F-16 went down, and they didn't know what to do with it. And I heard those F-16s went to Israel, and
Ironic.
that was the first. So this is what happened.
Interesting.
This is the best I know. But again, like my opinion or everything I say in here is based on the things that I know. So,
I just want to make one comment, Crunch, and then I'll let you to get back to the interview. But I mean, I think our listeners now in 2021 who are used to a certain world order that people, have, things were pretty dynamic back then in the late 70s, and it was an exciting time.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So, Bio, thanks for bringing that up, because I tell you, it's easy to forget that back in the 70s, we were all allies. We were all friends, and that's how this buy happened. And Mikey, you said something interesting, that the competition was between the F-15 and the F-14, and you said something about the radar weapon system making the F-14 more attractive. Can you talk more about that?
Well, yes. So basically, when we get with the radar on the F-14, at that time, I think the analysis that they did, it was further superior than the F-15. And because you had two crew working together, so one crew could only concentrate on the weapons and the radar system and everything, it will make the teamwork much better. And because Iran was already an F4 operator, I again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Iran was one of the biggest F4 operators outside of the United States. I think we had over 300 F4s, different variants that we were operating.
Sure.
And so because of that, I think the Air Force was more relying on two-seat fighter, group of two team working together as a radar officer and a pilot. And to be honest with you, at that time, and I don't know even right now, there is no platform like the AWACS with the Phoenix missiles that exist. So I believe still is proving itself to be superior. I mean, the Navy tried to replace the F-14 with the F-18, and eventually you see that now the F-18 is getting bigger. Now it's becoming bigger, and now looking at the wrong range missiles on the two-seater F-18, and let's call it the Super Hornet. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a F-14 again, and the new skin. So the concept of the F-14 of two crew working together with a better radar, longer range missile is kind of like coming back again. So yeah. I believe it still was a superior. And for what Iran wanted it with the MiG-25s, there was nothing like
it. That's a big thing. The Phoenix was the only missile around that had anti-Foxbat capability. You know, Crunch, I'm going to say one more thing, and I feel like sometimes here we're bursting bubbles or busting myths, but there's a lot of Tomcat community lore that the fly-off at Andrews Air Force Base between the F-14 and the F-15 was the thing that made the decision. And I mean, I give full credit to the Grumman crew that flew that fly-off, and I read the account of that, and it is just incredible. But there's a book about where they interviewed Iranian Air Force officers, and they go, come on, we would not make that decision based on one little air show. They go, we did our homework, and the F-14 was, the plane that we needed, the weapon system that we needed.
Right, because you think about it, at the time they've already got the F-4. The F-4 shoots the Sparrow. Guess what the F-15 was shooting back then? It was shooting the Sparrow. That was it. Meanwhile, you got the F-14 built around the AWACS radar and the AIM-54 weapon system designed for long-range shots at things like Foxbats and stuff. So, great. Hey, Mikey, so shifting gears for a little bit here. So we've talked about this. Let's go back to the beginning. You mentioned earlier something very interesting. You talked about how they wanted to get some younger blood in there when you first started. And I'm curious. So basically, for everybody's awareness, what years are we talking about here where you started flying the Tomcat?
I joined there in 1989, and I left or defected, I should say, in 1993. So this is that era that I was there. That was the time that the war kind of like ended with Iraq. That long 10-year war ended with Iraq. So the whole Air Force was going into like a recovery and rebuilding. So because of that, they were like trying very hard to rebuild it as soon as possible in case another conflict.
Gotcha. So they were bringing in a whole bunch of younger blood to replace some of the older guys at the time. Was it always that way, or did people have to start off with F5s or F4s before they moved over to the Tomcat?
Oh yeah. You definitely wouldn't get the F-14 on your first choice and coming in, as a nugget and go on the F-14. No, you usually before they were F4 Phantom guys, which are like way more experienced, and after that the F5 guys were coming in, and that was my background. So I was like flying in the F5s, and I'm still like a student, right? So I was still on the student side and flying F5s, and I think based on the parameters and your flying characteristic and how you work and stuff, and they graded you, you were just lucky enough that the position opens up, and I was like one of the youngest guys that came on the Tomcat, and I was surprised because when I got selected and my commander called me, again, I'm not going to mention any names or anything because of that, he took off his U.S. Air Force ring that he got it when he graduated from U.S. Air Force, and he gave his U.S. Air Force ring to me. And to this day, I'm still wearing his U.S. Air Force ring. I'm still wearing it right now, and it's in my hand. And it said, "Congratulations, and you've done great, and we hope to see you doing other great stuff." So, yeah, for me, it was like an honor. So I couldn't believe it when I came on the Tomcat. You have that sense of pride, but at the same time, nobody talks about it, but everybody knows that we got the Tomcat. So for Iran, Tomcat and flying the Tomcat is a national pride. So
makes complete sense. Absolutely, I feel that way. It's a national pride for me. That's right.
Mikey, you're answering some of the questions that I wanted to ask. So this is awesome. I mean, you are saying some of the things that I was wondering about. So thanks.
So you have two questions.
We got some more.
Sure.
Okay, so once you get selected, your commander tells you that you're going F-14s. Now you've already been training in the F-5, so you've got a little bit of experience and perspective, and you go to the F-14 training squadron. What did you think of that? Of that organization? Was it like a beautiful hangar with nice facilities, or was it really average? I mean, in the United States, squadron facilities are not. Navy squadron facilities are really just adequate. So how about the F-14 squadron over there? And then, tell us about, was it busy? Were the instructors good guys? Just give us the laydown on
that. It was overwhelming, Bio. I mean, oh my God. Like, it was like, I don't know, going from NASCAR into F1.
Hey, wait a minute. You got some...
It was like, yeah, you're coming from like a fast car and stuff like that, but then you're going into F1. I was like, okay, what is this? Like, I have like 20 buttons on my steering wheel, and it was overwhelming. All of a sudden, you're dealing with all the electronics and complex systems and training hands, and they expect they're demanding perfection, and these guys are the guys who've been flying F-14s in the United States, then came to Iran, and then they went through like a 10 years war experience on the Tomcat with not enough equipment on it, with not enough service and maintenance on it. You're taking off with the plane and you have like a warning lights on already, and you have to fly it, and you have to go, and you have to fight, and you have to win. So these guys are like in the next level, and then all of a sudden you're trying to keep yourself up with them, and it was very intense. In the Tomcat community, or maybe it's the cultural thing in Iran that usually the pilots get a lot of credit, and the Wizzos not so much. They say, "Oh, the pilot did it." So in order to break that, you're always flying with your Wizzo that is very higher rank and is an instructor and a higher rank. So he's breathing on your neck, and that kind of like even out the balance in the cockpit. And some of them were already pilots that sit on the back seat. So they're like F-14 pilots, and they're sitting on the back seat. So you're touching that throttle or something a little bit, he knows. He said, get the throttle back a little bit and put a little bit right rudder and do this and that. And you're like, Jesus Christ, like, I don't know this. But yeah, they're all well experienced, and they demand perfection, and it was very overwhelming. It was just like learning to fly it all over again, especially with the TF-30 engines and the flight characteristics.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yeah. So it was you had to be on your toes. There was no room, to get comfortable and sit back.
Wow.
Yeah, but luckily though, obviously you're a young guy, you're very enthusiastic, and even though it's challenging, you said, "This is what it takes. I can do this." You had confidence and skill.
Yeah. Yes, I'm like surprised. Sometimes I'm flying the DCS and on the Tomcat and stuff. Sometimes like, how the hell I did all this? I don't even remember this stuff. And I'm like, it's just like a whole learning curve again. But when you're young, you're focused and you don't have anything to do, just eat, sleep, study, and go fly.
Yeah.
And the flight, it was pretty intense. And I remember like a couple times on the F5, I did like 3 sorties in one day. And it was just like tiring. On the Tomcat, it was less, but it was a lot of briefing, debriefing, flying. Like you're not just going up there wasting time and gas. You're like every second that you're up there is programmed of what to do.
Now, hey, Mikey. So you seem to remember. It seems like you're talking as if you were still right back there. I know that you still remember quite a few of the systems from back at the time.
Some of them, yeah.
How well do you still remember all like your boldface and everything like that? Your emergency procedures?
Emergency procedures. Okay.
Stick forward, neutral, lateral.
The spin is like you never wanted to get the F-14 to a spin. I don't know.
I think I put you on this. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. There was kind of just a yes or a no.
But it was like nose down, like a inside the outside throttle idle, inside throttle full max, and kick the rudder and push the nose down, and just pray your Allah, Jesus, Buddha, that it works, and you pick up that speed and you get it up. But they were very intense about like the maneuvers and stuff. Like these guys were down to the whiskers. They would know exactly what's gonna happen 5 seconds ahead.
Man, that's
unfortunately,
good.
I heard. Unfortunately, one of them actually crashed last year or a couple of years ago. One F-14 on the turn to final. It crashed, and I think the guy wasn't kicking enough rudder, and the plane just turned inside the turn, and they couldn't recover, and they went down.
Wow.
And that was one of the things that is still like you have to be on your toes. If you're not, this plane will bite you.
Wow.
I wish
go ahead.
Model, a lot of these problems with the D model didn't exist, but with the TF, like the moment you set up the power, you had to go through your maneuvers with that power. You couldn't just on the high AOA, you couldn't adjust the power, otherwise you would get the compressor stall and off you go for full departure.
That's right. Because if I remember correctly, you had the greatest stall margin on your engine. We're talking about engine stall, not aerodynamic stall. The engine stall margin was greatest at military power, meaning the highest basic engine setting, and the next highest setting was full afterburner. And if you modulated the throttles, you had a tendency to pop a motor, have a compressor stall, and things could get a little exciting. Did you ever have any airborne emergencies during your time there?
Airborne emergency, like like sometimes you get the hydraulic,
Oh, really?
comes on and stuff. Yeah, I had one time. I was like, I had the hydraulic, and I was like, oh, okay, what's going on and stuff. It said, so we turned, the handle, the gear handle. You have to turn it, twist it, like to put the emergency gear down. So we did that once. One time I landed, and I had like about 30 knots crosswind. I landed, and then I'm pumping the brakes, and there is no brakes. And that little bow tie doesn't slow you down very much. And I'm like going down the runway, and I'm like having no brakes, and then we put the hook down, and you'll be surprised how much runway you chew up, by the time you find out. Like 10,000-foot runway in Isfahan, or just like gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like sitting there, and is like, and the guy is sitting back there, the instructor is like, okay, do something. I'm like, okay, hook down, cable, and we got the cable. But I mean, these guys been in 10 years war, right? I mean, things like this wouldn't scare them. They're like sitting back there really calm and relaxed and just looking at you and see what you're doing. And then you come out and said, oh, okay, so that was good and stuff. So we try something like this tomorrow.
So did they ever tell you war stories, or?
Yes. Well, we had some of them. Some of them wouldn't talk about it, but I was in some of the bases that would see the F4s, because the F4 guys were like the guys that were doing. Because as an F-14, we were just patrolling, and we were not allowed to enter Iraqi aerospace or anything like that. You were like completely restricted to stay there because the planes are very precious and valuable. But the F4 guys were like the guys who were doing the whole backbone of the flying, the reconnaissance guys. And like I personally saw the F4 Phantom landing with, those T antennas and stuff that they had back then,
Yeah.
the T antennas. Yeah, I saw the F4 Phantoms landing with the T antennas and 3 branches stuck in their pylons when they're landing.
Okay,
So
that's not good.
this is something I saw.
Yeah.
And this is after war when they're doing reconnaissance. So
Okay, before I'm going to get to the war stories, but real quick, in your training, how much what kind of training did you do? Did you do dogfight training? Was it intercept training?
mostly intercept. Most of the time they would do intercept. Dogfighting, yes, you do it with the dissimilar and with the F5s and stuff. But mostly intercept. The intercept was in the way that the radar sectors will try to guide you and position you in the perfect profile for the missile to be launched. As a person who was training on the Tomcat, I never carried any missiles. My total time on the Tomcat was something around 116 hours. All right, so I was like nobody there, but you practicing and they expect you to do everything perfectly. So most of the training that we had, there were special trainings about intercepting MiG-25s. So that was still one of the.
Did you practice?
Top. Yeah, we were practicing it, like how you go around like Mach 0.9 and you have to position it like this. And, I don't remember much of the details, but yeah, you had to be about Mach 0.9 and you point it up and you shoot the missile and you follow through. You don't like break just because it's a Phoenix. You don't break. You follow through it with it. So there was like a whole booklet, and it was just about MiG-25. So that will show you that how important
cool
the Persian F-14 was for the MiG-25. And I believe that one of the generals, General Rostami, I believe, because he became like a chief. I don't know the English, or the chief commander of the Air Force. I think he was the only guy or the first guy that shoot down the MiG-25 with the Tomcat. So yeah, that was I think the first guy who shoot the MiG-25.
That would be something.
Yeah, and then there was another major, I believe. Oh God, I forgot his name. I knew his name, but he was the first guy who got the gun kill on the Tomcat on an Iraqi MiG.
Do you know the details of either of those stories, of what happened?
The details I don't know much, but this is what we heard, because when we were flying, he said, "Oh, General Rostami is coming to the base," and this, and I was like, "Oh, General Rostami." I said, "Yeah, the guy who shot down the MiG-25." I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, yeah, there you go." But I tried to find some information about them on YouTube, because I think that they all interviewed on the YouTube. One of the top guys, I actually believe that I sent that interview to Bio.
Yeah.
Colonel Adeli.
Yeah.
I believe that he's U.S. He was the guy who shot down 3 Iraqi MiGs with 1 Phoenix missile over Kark Island. And so he's in the United States, and he's a well respected and well known and very experienced Tomcat guy.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a Museum of Flight interview. Or no, yeah, an American Fighter Aces, something like that.
Yeah, it was a F-14 Tomcat Association, so something like that. But I can find out.
No, we'll look it up. Yeah, we got it.
Hey, Mikey. So I know you said that you had only like 116 hours, right? Got it. So you were in the training process, and it was only a short period of time. But compare that to some of the guys who had been doing it for a while. How much would a fleet F-14 pilot fly in a year? How many hours would they get? How many sorties? However you counted it.
The way that we were flying, basically, if you wouldn't fly for 2 weeks, you had to do recurrency. So it was like that. Like, I mean, like they were really pushing you, and you would get a lot of flying done, and they will really push you to better, to get better and better, because they wanted to replace the. Sorry about the sound, guys.
It's all right.
They would try to replacing the experienced aging pilots that getting ready to retirement, and they were trying to use all their knowledge and experience and forward it into the new guys who are coming into the fleet. But it was very hard to replace people like that, because these guys were like trained in the U.S. and they had so much of experience over there coming back to Iran and during the war. So it was absolutely amazing. But I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to fly with these guys and learn from them.
Well, okay, so that's a great answer. Think now the same line here. So those are the pilots we're talking about mostly, but hey, it's a crew of two. What about all the Rios? What's their experience level, professionalism, their skill level? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, they were exactly the same, because those guys were all like a great team. So they will try to pair us up with the very well experienced and senior Rio officers to train us. And these guys were amazing too, because I mean, to be honest with you, I just had the stick and I was flying around. These guys knew exactly, hey, check your speed. Make sure that you're at this speed. Make sure your angle is right. Make sure it's this. No, you're wrong. Your intercept angle is wrong. You're gonna overshoot it or you're gonna undershoot it. And I'm like, I was just like flying, and these guys basically telling me what to do. So the experience that they brought was amazing, and I think that we will learn eventually from them. If I was still there and I was flying, I would learn from them to get better pilot. But they were doing the whole work. They were the unsung heroes.
Crunch.
So they were like,
Crunch, doesn't it sound a lot more professional than I think a lot of people would expect?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mikey, so this is eye-opening, the stuff you're telling us, so thank you.
oh, you're
Yeah,
welcome, guys.
absolutely.
I mean, again, this was my experience. This is what I experienced at that time. I don't know since 1993 until now what happened,
Right.
the changes that happened there and stuff. So I left when the MiG-29s just came.
Yeah.
It was like a few years that MiG-29 just came in there.
So the air crews and you said you had 2 weeks currency requirements and professional air crews. How about aircraft reliability? When you manned up, did you always launch? You said earlier that guys would have caution lights and they'd fly and they'd do their mission anyway. Did you have a lot of airplane problems? Did they have spares available?
I think that was the biggest challenge that the Air Force was dealing with, because Tomcat was very heavy maintenance. I believe it was like 1 to 24, 1 to 25. So for every 1 hour, you needed about 25, 26 hours of maintenance on it, something like that. But again, do you remember that we were not getting much parts, right? For this, I don't even know how these guys were like getting these planes flying. They were cannibalism, some of them, and putting it on the other ones. Some of the planes we were flying, they're flight worthy, but they're not combat worthy. So, like the radar is not working properly, or the weapon system on it is not working properly. But for training, the pilot is fine.
Mm-hmm.
So you did get airborne and have no radar sometimes.
Yes. So, but the guys were experienced, and you go on the radar and the DASC, the section radars, they will complete your training. You would do your training. They will vector you. They will like put you in the right angle for intercept and stuff like that. So all the simulations, and so you would get the training done. But the plane is not the combat certified plane, because of the radar, because of the weapon system, because of the other things that it had wrong with it.
Okay, how about other things that the F-14 needed? Start carts and electrical and all that.
those were okay. Those, I mean, like the start cards, yeah, that would work. If not, they would bring something else, and that way, the mechanics were like pretty good. One thing that you mentioned, I remember, is that for beginners, we were not allowed to taxi out of the bunkers. So the student pilots, the planes are all parked outside, and you're taxiing on the ramp. So even on the F5s, we were not allowed to taxi out of the bunkers until you reach certain level of proficiency. Then you could, because there was like a huge, like a 6-foot wall right in front of the bunker, right, for the bomb
Yeah.
thing. So if you would taxi a little bit off, you would tip the wings into the walls, right?
Now, I got to tell you, as a guy whose call sign is Crunch here, the fact that you might consider a pilot might accidentally taxi into a stationary object, personally, I find it somewhat surprising.
Yeah, so that was one thing. Yeah, I now that we were talking, I was remembering saying, wait a minute, yeah, I was not taxiing out of the bunker, Somehow, basically, the planes were always outside on the ramp.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, awesome.
Crunch, get us back in the air, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, where were we? Hey, so now earlier you were talking about, the primary mission of the F-14 was to counter the Foxbat threat, right? That was kind of what you were thinking about. And at the same time, though, that was, way back. Now you're getting into the 90s. The U.S. is over there. The U.S. carriers are over there. The U.S. Air Force has a presence. Gulf War is just finished in 91. What was the attitude towards like the U.S. threat, because we're no longer allies at this point? What was the feeling in the fleet at that point?
To be honest with you, again, we try to stay out of politics and religion and stuff like that, but somehow everything is like so integrated with each other that we cannot talk about one without the other one. And the thing is that most of the Iranian Air Force pilots were highly educated in the United States. Some of them had friends there. Some of them, even after the war, left Iran and came to United States, and they're still living there. And they were always the black sheep of the Iranian forces for the current regime of Iran.
Interesting.
They were never trusted. I heard the stories from, as I mentioned to you, we had so many relatives in the Air Force, and one of them we call uncles and stuff like that. When the revolution happened in Iran, there were a lot of pilots that were executed. I remember there was supposed to be a military coup that happened in one of the Air Force bases in Iran, and somehow the information leaked, and overnight about 140 fighter pilots were executed in one night. And they were all F-4 pilots. And so the Iranian regime never trusted the fighter pilots, never. They tried to replace them with more loyal crew, but those guys were not in the same level of intelligence or smart to be replacing these guys. So what I heard was that some of them flew their missions into Iraq with their ejection seat disabled by the regime, by the crews of the Islamic regime. They disabled their ejection seat. Some of them came directly from the cells, the jail cells, from the death row, and they put in the cockpit to fight. Which, in the ironic way, if you think about it, Saddam Hussein did a great favor to these guys by invading Iran, because all these guys were in the death row to be executed. And if the war wouldn't happen, these guys would be executed. So they literally pulled them out of the jail cells from the death row and put them in the cockpit and said, "Go fight."
Wow.
Oh, by the way, we're gonna disable your ejection seat too, so don't think about ejecting. So
Brutal.
So, and even to this day, after all these sacrifices that these guys have done, the regime still don't trust them. So there are a couple books, if you guys are interested, written by this historian and collector named Tom Cooper,
Oh yeah.
and he said about the Iranian F-14s in combat and Iranian F-4s in combat. One of the most dangerous missions that will happen on the F-4s were the reconnaissance missions. And when I knew one of the guys in the reconnaissance mission, the F-4 reconnaissance, because you know that they take the radar off and everything, and you go only solo and you have no backup, right? So their motto and their on the squadron for those reconnaissance mission was unarmed, alone, unarmed, unafraid. And these were the guys. And Saddam put a huge price for shooting down the reconnaissance pilots. And one of them for few years done like this super dangerous missions over Iraq to getting all these reconnaissance pictures and everything. And after 4 or 5 years of serving his country and stuff, the regime executed him, accused him of espionage.
Wow.
So this was the environment, the mentality that these pilots had to work on and fight for their country, while the regime is trying to find an excuse to kill them and get rid of them.
Hey, let me ask you a question that when we were thinking about this, I was dying to ask, because this is something else that shows up in these in books. People claim that Iran used the F-14 as a mini AWACS because it has, the F-14 clearly has a powerful radar, good range, good scan volume. Do you recall? Did you guys do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, all right.
Why wouldn't you use that beautiful AWG-9, right? So yeah, basically the F-14s will cover the F-4s and the F-5s in their missions. So I personally, I was in the training again,
Right,
but
sure.
One of the training is that you go in the 2-man formation, all right, and then you cover the package that are delivering the ordnance, right? So like if you're on the left side, you cover the left side package and your left wing, and if you're right side, you cover the right side of the package, and you both cover each other's sixes and your front. So you stay at a higher altitude, and you kind of like provide them coverage with the radar, and you inform them.
Okay, good. I guess the reason we didn't do that is because we had E2s and capability like that. But all right, well, interesting.
I wish we had, but you had to use what you have, and the F-14 was the best for it, especially with the radar, with the AWG-9.
That's great. Well, that's one of those things that I had heard before. I'm like, hey, I heard that they do this, and I was like, wow, that makes sense. But it's nice to have confirmation. So now let's say that you're the actual fighter. You're out there running that intercept. What kind of air-to-air weapons loadout would you train for, or would you have? What kind of missiles?
Okay, so I don't know. In the beginning of the war, apparently for some reason they couldn't use the Sidewinders and Sparrows, so mostly the Phoenix were effective on the F-14.
Huh.
Okay.
They were using Phoenix, so I don't know why the Sidewinders and Sparrows were not activated and the planes. Maybe because the planes were too precious, they didn't want them to get too close. But there were many engagements that they got engaged with like a 6 or 7 Iraqi MiGs, and only single F-14 engaging.
And no
Sidewinder. The other order, wow. Yeah, and the other order that the Air Force would give them is that the missiles are too precious, don't use them. As long as you make the Iraqis run away, the mission is done. So try not to use your missiles. The missiles are too precious. Try not to
just try to get out there and you put your radar out there, and then they get the indication like, oh, I'm getting looked at by an F-14 AWG-9 radar. I better run away because they're going to shoot me from 200 miles away.
And surprisingly, this is what the Iraqi pilots were doing. And sometimes they would say, what they would say is, Arba means like 14, and they will say that, and they would get away as soon as you get the radar lock on them. They will run away. They will go away. So, but I don't know why the sparrows and the sparrows and sidewinders were not installed or working on the F-14s in the early days of war. Then they tried to replace them with the Hawk missile to replace the Phoenix with the Hawk missile. They were putting the Hawk missiles on
I've
there.
heard of that. I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah, and they were like, I don't know if they were successful or not. Then they start putting the Mk-82s on the F-14s, and they wanted to use the F-14s for bombing. And I think they got successful. They put the rails on and stuff. Again, I didn't see anything myself, but yeah, they got successful. But then I don't know what happened to that project because we never got the training for the air-to-ground ordnance in the Tomcat. So I don't know what happened with that. Probably they got those fancers from Iraq and they saved the F-14s from carrying bombs. But they were doing all sort of experience, and then later they claimed that they reverse engineered the Phoenix missiles, and the new Phoenix missiles are even better than the original ones. So whatever truth is into that,
right?
I don't know. Again, there might be the politics behind it. So they get a little bit closer to Russia. It says, hey, so if we give you this technology, what do we get for it? And or do a joint operation. So you help us reverse engineer this, and
we're just speculating now, though. Really?
Yes. So we don't know. So it said the reverse engineering the Phoenix. I don't know.
Yeah,
but they're carrying it.
See that, and this is why I asked about the using the Tomcat as an AIC, mini AWACS, because there's so many things, articles and speculations written, and it's hard to tell what's true and what's not. So, I mean, there have been a lot of claims.
Exactly, and I've been out of the country for like 30 years now, so I don't even know. And to be honest with you, I'm not even interested, so I don't really follow it.
Yeah.
Until I see something comes up and is like interesting for me, that I was like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on in here? So, and one of the interesting things I saw a blackjack bomber was escorted by 2 Iranian F-14s.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's a
striking bio. I was like,
that's a striking photo.
Like, okay,
yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Okay.
So,
I got a question.
Sure.
Alert posture. Every U.S. Navy Tomcat guy is very familiar with alert, sitting in the ready room in your flight gear or sitting on the flight deck. How about you guys, Mikey? Did you and your fellow pilot, you sit alerts? You stood alerts?
Oh yeah, you wear that sexy speed chaps and you're sitting in there and the phone rings and the alarm goes and you're like, okay, where am I going? And you're running and everybody's running toward you and 2 people jumping on you and strapping you and you have to go and press. Yeah, so they're very meticulous with that because with the country and the way that all those guys during the 10-year war have been trained, it's very important. You have very little time to prepare takeoff and get yourself over the Persian Gulf to the Hawk Islands, which is the main oil export, right?
Right.
And that's your primary mission to protect the oil export and stuff like that. So yeah, that one is for all of them, for even the F-4 Phantom guys, they practice that all the time. So yeah, every once in a while you get that alert and you have to sit there with your speed chaps and ready to go.
So you were in training. You probably never. I mean, you don't have to really train for the alert in the RAG like our RAG. So you never sat alert, but you know that they did it, right?
Yes, but yeah. So you prepare yourself because once your time comes, they expect you to do it 100%.
I mean, it is cool. I mean, from my experience and Crunch, I'm sure you used to plenty of alerts. Well, I mean, you spend a lot of time just sitting there. Hopefully you've got books or letters or something to do. But if you launch on an alert launch, it's a heck of a way to start a flight. And then, a lot of times there's something cool at the end of it. So
yeah, well, at that part, it's it is kind of like exciting,
Yeah.
but at the same time is you're on your toes because you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes the alert comes up and it is you don't even know that, oh, the commander ordered for the alert. It wasn't
Right.
real. It was
But
just a
you never
drill.
know, because you get the call, you go,
No.
and you don't know what you're going to find. You might be like, "Holy cow! It's another fighter. It's a bomber, or maybe it's just a maritime patrol with no weapons, and you're just going to go escort it." Or there's a boat. I mean, sometimes you get called away on an alert for a boat. I mean, unless they're shooting at you, it's like, okay, yeah, there's a boat down there, right? But hey, so I did have one question from earlier. You had mentioned you were talking earlier about one of the airplanes crashed. I guess it was relatively recently. Basically, I just wanted to circle back to that. And do you recall there being many mishaps or anything? I mean, even maybe not even just the F-14, but other aircraft having issues.
Yeah, I lost one of my friends on a F4. We were having breakfast together, and then the lunchtime he was dead. I don't know what happened, but they were coming on the final, and I don't know, somehow they lost the engine, and he was flying with the instructor. And the F4, it has like a aerodynamic of a Coke bottle.
Yeah.
Like without those engines, you cannot
Right.
glide it. It doesn't go, and especially being like a complete dirty on the final. So what happened was that they tried to um, avoid hitting the buildings where the personnel's family live at the south side of the runway.
Wow.
So they tried to avoid that, and by the time that they tried to avoid that, the plane turned completely upside down, so they couldn't even
Oh,
eject.
geez. Wow. It's a tough business. I mean, this is a dangerous business. I mean, we all know somebody, right? I mean, this is a really tough business. I don't care what nationality you
So
are.
that one I carry it always with me. And after the launch, I had to do patterns and passing his wreckage. But that's a
Yikes.
reality,
Man.
and that's what it is. I mean, how many times you guys had the mishap on the boat and you had to clean it up right away because there are guys lining up to land, right?
Yep.
We have to move this.
Yep.
It's very unfortunate, but that's part of
Well,
our
we've
life.
flown more
Yes.
of those
I don't know.
airplanes than you guys have, and I guarantee you we've crashed more too. So, I mean, there are quite a few at the bottom of the
Yeah.
ocean out there.
So,
But,
so the part that you talked about like, the pilots. I mean, we are all pilots, and one thing we love is like flying. And no matter where we come from or the background, once we get together, all those politics and views that the other people have, it goes away, and it comes to that pure love of flying and what we are doing, and nothing else matters. And all of a sudden, we talk to each other like we know each other for years, and this is the beauty of it.
Mikey, you're very philosophical, which is good. That's good.
yes, absolutely.
Hey,
I came close to death, and like you know that I was accused of being a spy for Americans and Israelis, and with my background growing up out of the country and stuff, it's give them a solid proof that I'm a spy, and they wanted to kill me. And so luckily my dad was able to save me, and I escaped from Iran and came over, and I got the second chance to live. So every day I live, I think about it. If this is the last day of my life, what I want to do, what I want to accomplish today. And so when you get the second chance to live, you look at the life in a different perspective, in different views. Things are that not important for other people and taking it for granted every day, and you cherish it the moment you wake up. And things that are very important for other people, you don't care about it because it's not really important.
Mikey, I was going to ask you if you had anything else you wanted to say, but I think you just gave us our wrap-up statement. I mean, I'll give you the courtesy of having a thought to see if there's anything you want to add. But at this time, thinking back on the interview and everything, I think you have given us some unexpected stories, some exciting stories, and always some interesting stories.
Yeah.
And so thanks for joining us today. I'll let you take a moment, see if you want to add anything, and then Crunch will probably sign us out.
All right, and thank you very much, guys. I'm very fortunate to be talking to you guys, and discussing all these things and our love for flying and the plane that we flew, and we all have that in common. And in that being part of that community, I definitely miss Snort. I had a great talk with him, and I wish he was here and I could see him again. I was really looking forward to that. But there are many things in life that we can cherish it, and this is one of the moments that I'm very fortunate and lucky to have in my life, to be sitting in here and talking to you guys and enjoying the life, and hopefully we can one day meet together and have a beer and talk more.
I love
Sounds
it.
good.
Mikey, that sounds stupendous. It sounds great. I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show today, because I tell you what, me personally, this is one of those things where I'm like, hey, this would never happen. And I'm sure some of our listeners probably feel the same way. So I really, really appreciate it. I think this is great. And, best of luck to you and the family. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that sure was interesting as can be. I mean, we got a lot of information on both their capabilities and the operations of Iranian Tomcats.
One of the things that I found the most interesting to me was the fact that their intention was actually to stay feet dry in mostly a defensive posture with the F-14. I just kind of assumed that they would use it offensively. So that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, who knew? Okay, I hope you'll join us in 2 more weeks for another episode of the F-14 Tomcast.
All right, see you then.